is there a division between the idea and the technology? And is it an interesting division? Is it a meaningful?
Yes, and actually there is this notion of an emergent property. And I think the internet is probably a fine example of this notion of emergence, because if you were to analyze, remember the film we saw with the packets going all over everywhere, if you understood everything there was about how those packets are moving and everything else, it wouldn't give you a clue about Facebook or Google Plus or anything else. These are properties that emerge from layer after layer after layer of mechanism that exhibits very complex things and has these properties emerge because large numbers of people are interacting.
A comment I would make on that, Vin and colleagues got about 5 really amazing things right. And they sound so vague as to almost sound like I'm not saying anything. But one is state is at the edges. You make the weakest possible assumptions and you build on top of them.
Correct.
A really interesting one is no numbers. You don't bake numbers into standards so that they can scale orders of magnitude. So many of the technologies that came after them got those wrong. One of the interesting lessons about that, the internet, nobody runs it, but the closest to that is the Internet Engineering Task Force. Within that, there's the Internet Architecture Board. And there's this very small libertarian group that really understand those stories and tend them. And I think for me, one of the most interesting lessons, those stories are the architecture. And it's really striking how many technologies today are getting all of them wrong. In other areas, if you look at so many other emerging technologies today, those architectural insights they're getting wrong, which means they won't scale. They're going to trip over all of these lessons again. So for me, it's those stories.
And Alex, when I asked the question, I saw you sort of sit up at that, the idea between the difference between the idea and the technology.
Well, I think it's, I think it's both. It is a set of technologies, clearly, but it's also an idea. And I think that idea, in a way, predates the idea of the internet, sort of predates the internet in a way, but history is something we can only really understand in hindsight, right? So in a way, the reality of the internet today gives us an interesting frame for looking back and understanding what came before in a way that might not have been apparent at the time. So.
Well,
if anything, it was the technology and the architecture that informed the idea that came out of it, right? So internet as an idea is the decentralized network. We talked about the democratic potential, the means of anybody to, say, post something online and have millions of people view it, the many-to-many architecture of the internet. And the idea generally that somebody can come in and build some technology that then could be vastly disruptive and say one or a few individuals could do so. And because we have that fundamental architecture, that the kind of dumb network and the edges that have enabled individuals to then build this idea. And as I see it, it'll move forward. So even when the technology changes, assuming that it stays in this open manner, the idea will continue on.
Well, thank you.
There's a hidden truth in here.
Bring it out.
And that is that the internet is so successful because it was not designed to do anything in particular.
Huh.
All it does is move a little bag of bits from point A to point B with some probability greater than 0. That's all it does. Everything else emerges out of that as end-to-end interactions and everything else.
I'm glad you brought it to that moment, because I want to say when you came out on this stage, I kind of imagined myself like one of the replicants in Blade Runner. Meeting his maker. I felt that in my digital sense, by looking into your eyes, I was looking into the eyes of the creator. To see the past and to look into the eyes of all of you, I really feel like I've seen the future. Thank you, all of you.